Hello class, welcome to my desktop. So this I think will make it a little bit easier to complete these Excel exercises since Excel can be a little bit confusing sometimes, but is a very important and useful program. So to start off with, you are going to download the spreadsheet and the assignment into your Excel folder, and so let's assume that you've already done that. So we'll go in here, creating a graph, and I'm going to open my spreadsheet. Now I have already opened my Word document that has my directions, and I've actually printed it off and have it in front of me. What I would do if I were doing this myself, I would probably not print it off. I would keep it on my desktop like this, and I would use Alt-Tab. So you hold Alt down and then you press Tab, and then you can move to different pages that you have open. So I'm going to move from my Word document to my Excel spreadsheet, and then I can go back and forth and look at the directions and then perform the directions on the Excel spreadsheet. Alright, so to get started, this data set comes from Forestry 326, Fire Ecology and Management, which is a class that many of you will eventually take. So for this data set, students collected information from different sites near here on a fire that occurred in 2005. And they were sampling seedlings in areas of low, moderate, and high severity, as well as unburned, to see if there were different seedling numbers and seedling heights in those different burned areas. And so the students were asked to develop some hypotheses on what they thought the numbers of seedlings might be in these different sites. And so we'll be analyzing one of those hypotheses that students created. So for this assignment, you're going to be using the data set and follow these step-by-step instructions to create a graph. So for this assignment, it's not necessary that you understand the full scope of the project. Our purpose here is mostly just to run through some different ways to work in Excel. So some of the assignment objectives are going to be to organize data, enter equations, and create a graph. For our assignment today, we'll be analyzing the hypothesis that there are fewer seedlings in areas that burned with higher intensity, meaning hotter, fires than areas that burned with lower intensities. Alright, so let's get started. Note that in these directions I have some pretty detailed ways to do things, and the reason for that is there's usually more than one way to do things in Excel, and I want to make sure that you're introduced to the many different ways that you can do things, so that when you come up with different tasks for your other classes that you can remember what to do there. So even though you've done something before, I really encourage you to go through these steps really carefully so that you can pick out the different tidbits of information in there, and I guarantee you'll learn something new when you go through these exercises. So let's start here. We've opened our document. I'm going to save as. Now I have Microsoft Office 2013, so it does look a little bit different. If you have any questions on the way that this works for 2000 or for before 2013, just let me know. Alright, so I'm going to change this here. So it's my last name and save. Okay. Alright. So the first thing I want to do is expand the columns. So I can't really see what all of these things say. So I'm going to wait until my cursor has these double arrows, and I'm going to double click. And those two for right now are wide enough. The next thing is we need to add some units here. So it's really important to keep your units on all of your columns. It seems like you would remember, but it's always good to keep those in there for other people to look at. So I'm going to change this to meters. Now all of a sudden I can't see those, so I'm going to double click on these again and expand my columns out so I can see the full title. So as you can see here, we've got some different categories of intensity: unburned, high, low, and moderate. And we want to reorganize these because this doesn't really make any sense the way that it's ordered right now. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do that. The first one is we're going to create an open space and then slide these moderates into that open space. So I want you to highlight rows 16 through 23, and then right click and insert. Alright, so now we've got enough open spaces here for our moderates. So then we can highlight our moderate values, and so I'm holding down my my right or my left clicker and dragging my finger down, and so now I've highlighted all those, and so I bring it to a place where I've got the 4 arrows, and I click and I drag this up into its space. Alright, so now if I had not made that space there, then it would have overridden whatever was in those spaces, so it's important to make a place for those before. The other option is cutting and pasting. So let's say we highlight all the rows for unburned, and again, to highlight, so I like to highlight the rows because it just pulls them all down. You could also highlight and drag across this way. That's also an option. So I'm just going to go do this now, highlight all these, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to cut. So this is what it looks like when it's cut. We've got this moving dashed line, and then I'm going to move down here, go onto this row, right click, and I'm going to paste. Come on. There we go. Maybe. Alright, a little slow there. So now we've got some blank cells up here. So I want to highlight these and delete. Alright, so that does look a little bit different in previous versions of Microsoft Office, but it's the same concept. So we've done some work here, so we want to make sure that we save what we've done. So we'll click Save, and we'll move on to topic 2, doing the calculations. So to calculate density for each of these transects, we want to label the first 3 empty columns so that we can just lay a good foundation for what we're going to do here. So let's label these area and meters. There we go, meters squared. That little caret thing is on the number 6. Okay, next one is area in hectares, and next one is density, and this is number per hectare. Okay. So the first row that we made here, area meters squared, so as you probably remember from high school math, area is length times width, and so in this case it would be the belt length times the belt width. That tells us how much area was actually sampled, and that's important because if less area was sampled, then the seedlings would be that would change the density in those. So now let's enter our first equation here. So I will put my activate this cell here, and I'm going to put an equals sign in. Now equals tells Excel that you are about to tell it to do something. So it's ready to receive an equation of some kind. So now instead of clicking 30 or typing 30, I'm actually just going to click on this cell and it'll then reference that cell's information to be part of my equation. And then I'm going to press times and click my next cell, and then I'll click enter. And now we've got 60 here. So if I went over here and changed this value to 40, then it would change my value here because it's referencing the information in this cell. It's pretty slick. Alright. So then we go to our next column over, which is converting it into hectares. So we're going to press equals again, and then we're going to click on E2 right here, and we're going to multiply that by 0.0001 and press enter. Alright, so we've got that calculated. This is the area in hectares. This is the area in meters squared. Hectares are much bigger than meters squared, which is why it's a smaller number. Now in G2, we're going to again press equals, and we're going to enter B2 divided by F2, which is going to give us the density. So this, we've got the number of seedlings divided by the number of, or the amount of area that those seedlings occurred in. And here is our density. So now we want to do the same thing for all these other values. So do I have to go through and do that same thing each time? No, fortunately not. The beauty thing of Excel is that it really makes calculations really simple. So we're going to highlight these three things, and you can do a couple things here. So you can either put your little cursor on the corner and you can drag it down, and that'll replicate that equation over here. And we'll just look at something here. So double click. Notice how these referencing it right next to them, so it's pulling the proper information over. The other options, you can highlight those three and you can double click. Once you see this black mark, you can double click here, and that drags it all the way down, and it stops when the data stops, which is pretty useful. So let's talk a little bit about significant digits. So we've got these long numbers past the decimal point here, and this becomes pretty important in scientific work just because although we have these numbers, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're important. So there's this kind of this rule where you have only as many significant digits as you have numbers in your inputs. And so this can be a little bit confusing sometimes, but for right now we're just gonna have two significant digits. So we're gonna go through and how to change those. So in the column, we're going to go to our Home tab and see these little circles here, and we're gonna press. It doesn't want me to do it, so I'm actually just gonna highlight these numbers. Sometimes if there's a text box in there, it has a problem with it, and we'll change that to 2. Alright, so moving on to our next thing. Now we want to be calculating averages. We've got our information now, but we want to know kind of more general information about each of these categories. So the next available column is going to be labeled average density. And in H2, we'll do our equal sign again. And I'm going to start to type the word average. Now notice what happens when I start to type that. We've got some equations that are showing up here, and I can either continue to type the word average, or I can double click on average, and it makes this equation available for me. So now Excel is telling me it's ready to receive some highlighted information on what it wants, what I wanted to average. Alright, so I'm going to click on G2, and then I'm going to drag this all the way down to G8. And those are all of the high values. And then I'm going to press enter. So this is now the average for all of those high values. So we're going to do the same thing for our average. So what I'm going to do is copy here, and I'm going to paste it to the bottom here. Now, what I like to do to set my data up is I like to make a line. So it's sometimes hard to see where high ends, and so I'm going to put a line on the bottom of this, so then I have a little bit of a better barrier, so I don't end up pulling the wrong data into my averaging. There we go. Alright, so now because I've copied and pasted this, it might not be the right size. So I'm going to drag this box a little bigger, make sure that I include all the moderates, and press enter. Now Excel does this funny thing where you can't just copy and paste something. So notice if I tried to paste it down here, doesn't have anything copied. So I need to copy it again and paste it again and double click. Now it's a little big, so I drag it smaller, enter, copy again, paste again, and I use Control V for copying and pasting. So so let's see here. Control C is copy and Control V is paste. Alright, so that matches up just fine. So there we have our averages. Alright, next column is going to be standard deviation. So we're going to label another column here. Standard deviation. Something I forgot to do here is actually change this so that we can see our columns better. I'll highlight these, and I'm going to say wrap text. So now we don't have to have really wide columns. We can actually just have more than one row of information. There we go. So in this cell we click equals, and now we start to type again. We use standard deviation, and in Excel there are shortening. So average was all spelled out, but standard deviation is a little bit shorter. So STDEV. Now, if you're not sure what the shortening of something is, you can look it up online. So I'm going to highlight these same values for high and do my same process here for copying and pasting and adjusting. Copy and paste. Make sure that it's the right size. And it's a little big, but that's okay. Since there's no value in there, it's not that big of a deal. Right. Now, from what we've already calculated, we're going to calculate our standard error. In this class specifically, Phil is looking for standard error calculation, which is can be a little tricky sometimes. And it's a good exercise here because you have to do more than just highlight some cells. So now we're going to name this column STDER, standard error, and press equals, and we're going to click on I2 here and divide, and we're going to type in square root. Now this is something that will come up in Excel. SQRT, so here's square root. Double click on that. And I'm going to do count here. So I'm going to type count, and again this comes up in Excel. And now I'm going to highlight G2 through 8, all of the highs. And what count does is it tells me what the number is. So this is the number of items that I have in my sample. And I'm going to close my parentheses. Notice how it highlights the different parentheses with different colors. And now I'm going to press enter. So it looks like I have a typo in my, oh I see, I've not closed one of my parentheses, so we'll add that back in there. And sometimes Excel autocorrects things, which is pretty useful. Oh, so Excel autocorrected that for me. All right. Now we're going to make our graph. So we've done our, oh actually, wait, I need to do my standard error for all these ones. So I'm going to again copy and paste and make them the right size. Please forgive me if I hum, it's kind of a habit. Make sure this is the right size. All right. Creating a graph. Here's where the fun comes in. So first, to create a graph, we need to organize our data a little bit. Right now, the data that we really want to look at is kind of all spread out. We've got these groups of information that we want. So in L1, I'm going to label the column, these three columns, fire severity, density, and standard deviation. Okay. In L2, I'm going to type high, moderate, low, and unburned. Okay. Now I want to show you something here. So I'm just going to highlight these columns. I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to paste them right here. I should move these over. So I just moved these columns. I'd put them in the wrong row there, but I highlighted them and then I drug them over. So notice that when I pasted these here, there's nothing there. The reason for that is they are looking for their information, and the information is over here. So that's not going to work. So I'm going to clear these out. This one too. And instead, I'm going to highlight these, copy, and then I'm going to right click over here and I'm going to go to paste special. And again, this is going to look a little bit different in different versions of Microsoft Office, but what you're looking for is pasting just the values. And so here, this is what this looks like, just the values. Now, what this means is that when if I were to make changes to my numbers over here, they wouldn't show up in these, because these numbers are no longer tied. They're no longer tied to the data in my the information in my data over here. But we're going to need to do this to create our graphs. So we're going to copy the other pieces of information in there as well, and also paste special and do our values. When you are copying several things, you can highlight them. So I'm going to highlight this, I'm going to hold Control down, and I'm going to highlight this as well, and I'm going to click copy, and I'm going to go into the upper left corner of where I want that information to go, paste my values, and notice how the two things are pasted in and they're right next to each other. All right. The other way to do that I wanted to show you is you also have the ability to keep things permanent by putting $signs in them. So if I were to take this one here and if I were to put a $sign in front of each of these numbers, $sign here, now if I copy and just pasted normally, now this is still tied to that proper information. So that's definitely preferable, is to have those $signs in there. Alright, so we've got our information here. I like to just make this stuff bold, so I'm a big fan of keystrokes, so I use Control B and make this bold so I kind of know what the headings are here. So now we are ready to create our graph. So you're going to highlight L1 to M5, because first we're going to graph our fire severity. So on the Insert tab, you're going to insert a column. Now, again, this looks a little bit different in 2013. So Insert Column Chart. And we just want the first one here. Alright, so already we've got something pretty interesting looking. We'll just need to revise this now and make sure that it looks like the instructor would want it for his course. So the first thing that's required in this specific assignment is that we need error bars. So when the graph is active, there are chart tools that become available up here at the top. So for here, they are in our Add Chart element. So you'll have to look around a little bit if, so for earlier versions of Windows, there's a different tab up here, but you're essentially going to be looking for your error bars. So my directions were written for earlier versions of Office, and so if you're using those earlier versions, then you can follow those, and if you're using 13, then you can follow what I'm doing. So we're going to add our standard error bars here. Click. And it looks like they show up, but unfortunately these are incorrect. So we're going to need to specify what information goes into these error bars. So if I click on my error bars, I can right click and format my error bars. And I do want both. I don't really care about the cap thing, but I want to do custom and specify my values. And this is a pretty common thing that comes up here in Excel, is this box that lets you select things. So this this little box right here means that this window gets smaller and I can move it away. So for my top values of error, I'm going to highlight these values, and since they can be the same higher and this than as lower, then I'm going to do the same ones for negative and select those same values and make it bigger, and then I click OK. Now notice that the error bars are different sizes for each of the different fire severities. And so what this tells us is that in high fire severity, the density of seedlings could be as high as this many and as low as this many. And so it helps us a little bit with how accurate our information is. So now we need to customize our graph and make it look a little bit nicer. The first thing I want to do, if you have a legend that shows up, then I want you to delete that. You just click on it so that the outside is highlighted and then delete it. Also for this specific assignment, the instructor does not like these grid lines in the back. So click on one of the grid lines, notice that they're activated when the little dots show up, and then click delete. And then you'll go away. So we also want to change the colors in these bars. So click twice on one of them. So if you click on them once, then all of them get activated, but then I would change the color in all of them. But we want to change the color in just one. So now I have one's attention here, and I'm going to right click on it and format data point, and I want to do this bucket here, and I'm going to change the fill, solid fill, and change the color. So in scientific graphs, you always want to use a grayscale. And so I tried to make the follow the grayscale using the most logical order of things. So in this case, I would think that high gets to be the darkest color and unburned gets to be the lightest color. So here we have a light color here. Go through this again. Solid. You could get really fancy, but usually with these things, you don't want to get too fancy. It doesn't really buy you much. And it seems like that's not quite different enough, so I'm going to do two sections of color different. So up 2 brings me there, and then and if this isn't dark enough for me, then or if there's not enough contrast, I can certainly go in and change that. But now we've got some distinction there between each of those bar graphs. So we want to now change some names of things. So if I were to just show you this graph, you wouldn't really know what these numbers on the side were, or what this high, moderate, low, unburned meant. So we're going to label some things so that things are a little more clear. So first we're going to change the name, and the name showed up automatically, which is nice. But we want to change it to seedling density in different fire severities. And we're going to specify our units here because specifying units is really important. Now we need to add axis titles. So again, in this add chart elements for this version, I want to add an axis title and a primary horizontal axis title. My horizontal axis is going to be fire. Now notice that it shows me typing up in the bar up here, but not down here immediately. So I have to press enter, and then it shows up down there. Another chart element, more chart titles. I want primary vertical. And this one's going to be seedling density. And enter. Specify this again. And here you have a lovely graph. Isn't that great? Look how fantastic that is. You could turn this in and get great points. Although, as I'm looking at this, I really don't like how many numbers are here, so I think I'm gonna highlight here, and I'm gonna do what we did before and change the number of significant digits there so that not so many show up and it's a little bit more clean looking. So for your assignment, I want to, you have questions that you need to answer. Most of them are looking at numbers that you have calculated for different things and entering those in your quiz on bblearn. But I also want to see a copy of what you've created. So you can save this image and you can submit your spreadsheet and then turn those on bblearn. There's a little more directions on the bblearn turn-in area. And I hope that this was useful. Next week we're going to cover some more Excel fun into summarizing data, and then the week after we're going to do some statistics. Each of those assignments uses some of the information that some of the skills we've built today, but we are going to build on those and learn some new things. So good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.